Welcome to a bonus episode of Patio Pondering, the podcast. Today I'm going to be doing a solo episode talking about the corn conditions on our farm and some of the challenges that we faced with planting conditions and some of the decisions we made that may have affected us. I'll be sharing the vocals from a video I shared on YouTube where I looked at the conditions of a corn crop in a field that's right outside our house and talked about what we might do in the future to fix it. Now, as many of you know, here in northeast Indiana, we had a lot of wet weather this spring, and a lot of the corn in our direct area and to the east of us didn't get planted until the last weeks of May and the first weeks of June. Now, you have to remember that the crop insurance date to finish planting corn is June 5th in our area. So there's a lot of decisions that were made before that date so that we didn't have the penalty of reduction in guaranteed yield. So take a listen to the next 6 minutes as I talk about the challenges and what I was seeing in the field right outside our house and discuss a little bit about what we may do or what we might do in the future. So we've got a challenge on our farm, and contrary to what a lot of friends of mine probably will say, I'm going to show you what we got. Here in northeast Indiana, we're right on the edge of where it was wet. You go east of us in Ohio, it was wet all spring. You start here and go to the west, it started to be a little bit better, but on our farm, and particularly the ground we farmed, it didn't really dry out for the most part. Now, we did get some soybeans planted in mid-May. The 19th, we planted a lot of beans. Got a lot done in one day. We were kicking up dust. The beans planted beautifully. And we chose to plant beans that day instead of corn. Then it started to rain. Then around Memorial Day, it started to dry up again. But we got wet. And maybe I'm being too cautious. But when I was pulling soil samples to determine if we're going to plant, I had crust. And then underneath the crust, I had mud. So we hit the first week of June. And the calendar said plant, so we got the planter rolling. In some places we were kicking up dust. In other places, I knew I shouldn't have been there. I had a queasy feeling in my gut. And I couple that with us having the planter set at a good 2 1/4, maybe 2.5 inches deep. We probably set ourselves up for a big problem. Especially when you consider that we got rain for the next few days after we planted this corn. So let's take a walk across this field and you can see what we're talking about. So here at the field entrance, this is a low spot that always is a little bit wet. But as you see, we get outside of that wet spot, even in areas where it starts to dry out, we had poor emergence. You can see along here, a whole bunch of skips. Part of that might have been from the sprayer. But even here in the low spot, on a side hill, really poor emergence. Here more poor emergence. Even here when we're getting on top, we didn't get great emergence. And then as you look across this field, you can see places where we had wetter soil and probably shouldn't have been planting. In particular when we get down this low spot, you can see the sprayer tracks that stopped emergence and then no emergence. So as I've been talking with my agronomist, we made a few mistakes. First, we probably set it too deep for, number one, our soils, and number two, for the wetter conditions we were in. We probably should have waited, but it was June 1st or 2nd. The calendar said we had to plant. And the other question that I've got, and this might sound like blasphemy coming from me, but do we need to get a field cultivator and stop no-tilling our corn? So here's where I've been planting no-till. This is our 17th or 18th crop. And aside from a few specific incidences where we worked the entire field, we've been no-till. Our corn planter set up with Yetter shark tooth row cleaners, where you put on CBGI extra wear double disc openers. We have either Yetter or copperhead spike closing wheels. We dribble our starter out back so we don't disturb the soil with fertilizer application. And then we planted our first cover crop, which was Austrian peas and tillage radishes in 2010. The last 2 years, we put cereal rye on 75 to 80% of our ground. Now, the ground that we looked on here was soybean stubble, so we didn't have the cover crop causing trouble on this one. But I'm asking myself, do we need to get a field cultivator and stop no-tilling this corn, because this isn't good. Now, I'm not saying that running a field cultivator when it's wet is going to fix wet condition problems. I'm not saying that. But I'm wondering if we had run a field cultivator on those few days that it was dry in April and mid-May, that stale seed bed planting into this might have been a better situation for us. I don't know. That's the thought that's been keeping me up at night. And I know my friends that are 100% no-till are going to think it's blasphemy, but I don't know. And the thing that makes me think about that is I've got 2 other friends that are 100% no-till, actually 3. And every one of us have had problems this year with Emergence. Some of it was on my soil type, with or without cover crop. Another one was south of here that's a little flatter, more productive ground that is pattern tiled, that they planted a day or two too early and they have problems. So I don't know. So I'm mostly posting this video as a question to myself, I guess, is do we need to stop no-till, or do we pray again that next year the conditions will be better and we're not fighting this bad emergence? I don't know. I'd love to have your comments, suggestions, conversations, because I'm at my wit's end. We thought we had our corn planter set up for us to just be ready to really rock and roll on corn, and Mother Nature didn't cooperate, or I didn't jump when Mother Nature said jump. I don't know. So thanks everybody for listening. I'd love your comments and discussion. So after listening to that, I'd be interested what people's thoughts are, because I'm sitting here as a long-time no-tiller. I remember talking about no-till in the 1980s and convincing or talking with the man that farmed my grandparents' ground at the time about no-tilling. And had I not gone to graduate school in 1993, I would have probably bought a Great Plains no-till drill and a tractor and started no-tilling soybeans in our area. And that was a time before we had Roundup, or Roundup-ready soybeans. And if I look in my cabinet over here, I've got the Fundamentals of No-Till Farming that was put out by Ortho, a chemical company, and that was published in 1983. So I'm not a Johnny-come-lately evangelical that thinks that no-till is the next thing that's going to be saving the planet and using it as fitting into our regenerative agriculture. I truly think it works. And the positives of it, of saving the soil. But there's a lot of positives to no-till. But I'm going to have some serious discussions with some friends the next couple months and in preparation for next year's planting season, because either I'm totally wrong in my ability to assess planting conditions and I'm too very cautious with planting conditions and don't plant early enough. I've written a couple times in the blog of Patio Pondering talking about that verse from Ecclesiastes that King Solomon wrote well before Christ was born, about that person that watches the clouds will never plant or will never harvest. In essence, waiting for perfect conditions. Maybe I fall into that. But regardless, we're going to have to do something different, or somebody's going to have to help us pray and put in a good word with the good Lord and Mother Nature and give us a week and a half of good weather in late April and early May for us to be able to get this corn crop planted. I don't know. Just a little bit of riffing here on an afternoon as I think about the direction of our farm and what we can do to improve. We're trying to do better each year. And when we run into these weather challenges that set us back, we can't accomplish that goal of getting better every year, at least not easily. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this impromptu solo version of Patio Ponderings, where I dive deep into what's going on our farm. We didn't talk about my ag roots, but we were talking about roots in ag. In this case, they were rotten corn roots. We're going to continue to have conversations where we dive into people's ag roots. I'm just waiting for a bunch of confirmations to get back on track for our interviews, and I'm looking forward to the list of guests that we have to share with you. Thank you, everybody, for the likes, the listens, and the suggestions.